Hello everybody and welcome to the Loudcast. My name is Kevin McLean and I am your host. It is week 2 of our brand new format. Thank you so much for watching last week. A bunch of you tuned in and left comments and that is amazing to see. We really appreciate it. So please do continue to watch, continue to get engaged. Remember, you can like and subscribe on this video. You can leave us a comment, all that good stuff. This week we are getting weird. We're talking about the surreal, the wonderful and odd in poetry. And so to get you set up, before we bring in our wonderful special guest, Mark Gallie, to chat a bit about the subject, I'm gonna set the mood as last week. So I think we are gonna start with a lovely poem from a surreal poet based in Glasgow named Leo Glaister. He has done a plethora of incredible poems about sort of sci-fi subjects, time travel, all that wonderful stuff. But this poem specifically is one of my favourites. It's called Telephony, and you'll see what it's about as soon as it starts. I'm just going to let you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you in a minute.
Hello. Thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. To listen to a poem, press 1. To hear our list of all available poems, press 2. To check your account details or make a payment, press 3. To request a poem from one of our list of approved poetry subjects, press 4. If you would like to recommend a new subject for a poem, please hang up. To report a fault with a poem, press 5. For just constant screaming, press 6. To hear some reassuring words about whatever it is you're doing with your life and the choices you've made that are ever so slightly louder than your own internal voice of nagging self-doubt, press 7. Or to hear these options again, press 0. Thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. To listen to a poem, press 1. To hear a list of all our available poems, press 2. To check your account details or make a payment, press 3. To request a poem from our list of approved poetry subjects, press at present we can offer poems on the following subjects: love, romance, life, doubt, school, Christmas. To hear this list again, press 9. Or to return to the main menu, key hash at any time. At present, we can offer poems on the following subjects: love, romance, life, doubt. I'm sorry, all our poems on doubt are busy at the moment. Please press 9 to return to the list of options. Or to return to the main menu, key hash at any. Thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. To listen to a poem, press 1. To hear our list of available poems, press I'm sorry, all our poems are busy at the moment. Why not visit our website, where you can check your account details, make a payment, or download our poetry application form without having to wait. To return to the main menu, key hash and thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. To listen to a poem, press 1. To hear our list of available poems, press 2. To check your account details or make a payment, press 3. To request a poem from our list of approved poetry subjects, press 4. If you would like to recommend a new subject for a poem, please hang up. To report a fault with a poem, press 5. For just constant screaming, press 6. To hear some reassuring words about whatever it is you're doing with your life and the choices you've made that are ever so slightly louder than your own internal voice of nagging self-doubt, press 7. Or to hear these options again, did you know that you can now check your account details and make a payment online by visiting our website? To make a payment over the phone, please select from the following payment options. To make a payment by debit or credit card, press 1. To beg for more time, press 2. If you are feeling demotivated to pay and would like a threatening message to get the wind up you, press 3. If you have already made a payment but are still receiving payment requests and would like them to stop, press 3. For just constant screaming, press 6. To make a balanced settlement by becoming one of our helpline poets, press 7. Or to return to the main menu, key hash at thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. You will now hear some reassuring words about whatever it is you're doing with your life and the choices you've made. Once they drown out the voice of your own internal nagging self-doubt, please press 9 to maintain the volume. Cheer up, everything will work out. 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 Thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. Thank you for calling. Please listen to the following options. Thank you for calling. Please listen to the. Thank you for calling. Please. Thank you for calling. Please. Thank you for calling. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, that was Telephony from Leo Glaister, hit 6 for Constant Screaming. Yep, that poem has never felt more fitting. Has anyone been on the phone to HMRC recently? Yeah, okay. Moving on. We a few years ago, and you know, the comedy aspect of it isn't just what I'm talking about when I'm talking about getting surreal. I'm talking about pushing the edges of what you're doing, your creative discipline. And a few years ago, we got contacted by two amazing guys, Dan Simpson and Sam Illingworth, who are a poet and scientist, respectively. And they do a thing called Experimental Words, where they came up to us and they got us a bunch of academics and scientists from Edinburgh University, and they paired poets up with them, and we did this show that was poems or 10-minute sets paired with scientists. It was an amazing event, and I think actually we have a full copy of it, so I'm probably going to be putting that up on the Patreon as a on demand for the sort of $5 and up patrons probably this week. So if you enjoy this little sneak peek that you're going to see, then please do consider jumping over to the Patreon and signing up. But for now, I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Dan Simpson, who is one of the organisers of Experimental Words, and his wonderful emoji poem. Just for listeners of the podcast, it's not going to make as much sense to you because there's emojis rely on seeing them. So sorry, you might want to come and check out the YouTube version. But yeah, Dan Simpson and his emoji poem.
This is an emoji poem for you guys. It goes exactly like this. A house party. It's arty, farty, full of hipsters, posers, a couple of jokers, and a girl, a boy, eyes meet. Yeah? I'm glad you like that. That is the concept of most of the poem. A smile returned, it's sweet. He waves like a tool. Be cool, she thinks. He walks, he talks. A drink? Yep. She says, be back soon. Oh, so cute. Be back soon. He says, 2 beers, clink, cheers. And then nothing. Silence, they're tongue-tied. It's awkward. I think this is the noise you make internally when things get awkward. Kind of making that noise now myself. She says, okay, why did the chicken shoot the comedian? He rolls his eyes, she replies, because chicken's sick of their crossing road bullshit. He sighs, oh man. No way. So nerdy, he says, but ice broken, they laugh. The music is cheesy. The Spice Girls, Wet, 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 the Monkees, the Beatles, Four Tops. Any guesses? What do you think this one might be? You've got the hang of this. What have we got? What's this? Grease, yep. What's this? Grease soundtrack, well played. Glad you enjoyed that. There is no experimental words tonight. I've just got 500 of these slides for you to guess through. No, I'm joking. Any guesses? What this one might be? Have time. Good guess. Smashing Pumpkins. Close but no cigar. The Doors. The Scissor Sisters. Talking Heads. Everybody, at one point, like at any party, does the conga. Yeah, okay, I'll leave it there. Okay. They dance. It's a whirlwind romance. They talk. They hold hands all night, from sunset to first light. They kiss. They wish the party wouldn't end. The party ends. They swap numbers. He says goodbye, that wave again, and he leaves. Forgets his coat, and then he leaves. The night bus home, she checks her phone. Message received, it's really small. Of all the emojis he could have sent, just one says it all. Thank you.
And that was Dan Simpson there. What a legend. I love Dan Simpson so much. He is running weekly workshops, so please go and check them out on a Sunday. I'll put links below to where you can check that out, or where you can go and support him on his Ko-fi page. Is it Ko-fi? Coffee? The thing where you buy him a coffee. I'll put a link below and you go and check that out. Dan is a great friend of ours here at I Am Loud, so please do go and support him. But we are getting into the nitty-gritty, and this week's poem is an excellent example of what we want to talk about. The live performance poem we put out on the YouTube channel this week from Ben Rogers, which is a Lynx Africa, and it's a surreal dive into the mind of a pubescent Glaswegian, I guess. That's a terrible intro for it. I'm sorry, Ben. Guys, just enjoy the poem. We will be back after this chatting to Mark Gallie about it and all the wonderful weird poetry that we can. So stay tuned for now. Enjoy Ben Rogers with Lynx Africa.
In defence of Lynx Africa, me and my pals were all wee fannies, claiming we'd shagged lasses on family holidays in Spain, all with suspiciously unforeign names like Fiona or fucking Anne-Marie. And we'd Jessie test with anything. I've still got the scars to remember measuring my manhood through who could withstand the most pounds pounding on their knuckles, rubbers rubbing on their arms, bruises ruled by rulers are amusing, so we're immune to their harm. And we'd stink up the back of the class with our post-match bun musk or mask or fag breath with whatever we could grab, which tended to be 3 packs of What's-It, so sorry if our jokes sounded cheesy. And we'd speak exclusively to your tits. I can only apologise. It's just that they were new and exciting and we'd never seen anything like them. And we'd unclasped your bras and claimed it was for a laugh when in reality it was practice. An attempt to learn something at school that we might actually use in life. We fought over anything, mostly foolish pride, so effectively you. Because we all fancied the fuck out the lot of us throughout our school careers. I once had a note passed to the wrong lassie and I still went out with her for 2 weeks. My first kiss was at a school disco, half drunk on Glen's vodka, the other half on puberty. There was something romantic playing on the speakers, can't remember what it was, either Angels by Robbie Williams or the Venga Bus. I held her at the very bottom of her back, just at the point where the pinky grazes arse cheek, but no lower, because we weren't ready for that. Cranked my head 90 degrees to the left, but she went right, so I nearly gave myself whiplash trying to realign this flight. That's when I realised that I still had my eyes open. I've not done this before, but even I know that's known. So I closed them. Our lips met. I held my breath. Started drowning in sweat, pressed and felt myself face to face with her braces. And that's when I realised I'm in over my head. Because it's only at this very moment that it occurs to me that in order to kiss like a grown-up, you're supposed to keep your mouth open. Eyes closed, mouth open, golden rule, should have fucking known, but instead of correcting myself, I was frozen. And she ran her tongue against every whisker and stem of my prepubescent moustache attempts, and I'm still holding my breath. Start trembling, turning blue, about to pass out. I don't know what I'm to do. I yank my head back and... Phew. Look into her eyes and see some young, smitten with lust, fool. And then run off in some ill-advised attempt to play it cool the next day at school. I can't keep my head down. No longer a VL, big swagger class clowning around, pointing out when all my pals' trousers made it look like they had erections, expecting everyone to stare. I'm not a virgin, mate. I shagged that Claire for the Costa del somewhere. You're the one with the stoner. You're talking shite. So in defence of Lynx Africa, If you can still remember that scent, they must have been doing something right.
And that was Ben Rogers with Lynx Africa. What a maniac Ben is. It was a tremendous poem. I remember that night vividly. Ben is an electric performer backstage too, let's just put it that way. But joining me on the Loudcast to chat about all things Ben Rogers and about Lynx Africa, the poem we just saw, is the one, the only, Mr. Mark Gallie. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Kev. Thanks very much for asking. How are you?
I'm good, man. I miss your face in real time.
I miss your face in real time. It feels very weird for me to be on face of the Loudcast, to be fair.
Oh yeah. You're normally hidden away.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've been hidden away, referenced only in mentions.
You are still in the remote location in Leith, yes.
Yeah, the remote location in Leith. Oh, I should have got my bear buddy.
You should have. For those that don't know, Mark is an integral part of Loud Poets. He is one of the directors of I Am Loud Productions, and the sort of team conveniently is separated into two flats. So myself, Katie Hales and Perry Johnson live together, and Bex Sherwood and Mark Gallie also live together. Yep, this is our whole life, so, pain. But you guys are doing all right in your remote location in Leith, yeah?
Yeah, the remote location seems to still be secure. No infiltration yet. Keeping outside very, very moderately. I'd like to say I'm making good use of it, but I really don't know if I'm making good use of staying inside.
Well, you did NaPoWriMo. That was...
I did do NaPoWriMo. I did beat Perry at NaPoWriMo. I did complete NaPoWriMo.
You did. And you guys can check out all of our NaPoWriMo Loudcasts. Plug. But yeah, we're chatting Ben Rogers. Mark, what did you think of Lynx Africa?
Oh, I love Ben Rogers so much. It's the beauty of what I think for that particular poem as well is that he's somehow managed, and I don't know if you're the same because it feels very much like a Scottish male thing, of like he's managed to pack my puberty into that poem. Like there's so many things that click with me on that, and it's...
It's funny, I was talking to Katie about it, and I was kind of saying it's a bit of an oxymoronic term, but it's new nostalgia, where it's, it kind of works in decade waves, and it's now we're hitting the point where we're old enough to be nostalgic about school discos and stuff, so it's the sort of terminology around them. It's nice seeing that shift of being very unlike, what the stereotypical school dance would have been viewed as a little while ago.
Oh yeah, like it's the lines he uses about either like Angels by Robbie Williams or the Venga Bus, and I'm like perfect extremes, and just like bang on. Just it takes me back at least very much. Oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. I was just like, I didn't go to many like school discos, but like even like the two that I went to over the course of like 10 years, both of them played. So it's an amazing ability.
Well, you grew up in Elgin, Mark, so I assume
did.
A school disco for you is like 3 kids and a couple sheep or whatever, right?
No, hang on now. Elgin's got a thriving school community. I missed out a lot.
Good.
I missed out on so many of the primary school discos though, because I just moved back from Germany. So like I came back right at the end of primary 7, so like I didn't really know anyone. So then school discos were very weird because like. I was like, what is all of this?
But I think especially in the poem, beyond the sort of like those fun nostalgia pops are lovely, right? And we always try and do those in our poetry. It's nice to sprinkle those in. And Ben's a great example of a guy who can weave a serious subject matter around some good, sort of linchpin gags that you'll put throughout it. But for me, a big theme of that poem that I really enjoy is that it's a real good exploration of millennial masculinity, I guess, to not sound too arsey, but right, like it's a look at how that generation of people grew up viewing women and the context of that sort of 90s lad culture, but now those men have grown up and are part of a different, better culture where they're more aware of not being absolute like toe rags and horror people, like, you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was going to pull across. It's packing in this to say into my puberty, and it gives such a gives such a unique and sort of different viewpoint into it. So that's why I'm like, it hits that nostalgic feel for me. But I think what's very very clever and very good from Ben is like, even any of the lassies will go, oh, correct, like they recognize behavior, or if you're in that school, or if if you've got parents or kids, you'll have seen certain stuff like that, and it really does. It paints, it's like you say, that sort of new nostalgia. It paints a really good picture of a generation, in a sense, in that way.
But especially in that progressive way, where like I think a big standout line for me is the bit where he kind of goes, and we would always speak to your tits, and sorry ladies, we'd just never seen anything like them before, and you know what I mean? Like he goes,
no,
it's
bang on.
It's that acceptance of the sort of the bad behavior, the misogynistic behavior and stuff, but like we knowing any better, and he hints at a sort of bigger climate and culture at the time, and then that reflection on it. Like I really value poets who are willing to not always put themselves in the best light, but tell the best story because of it, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. As I say, I really like that he does it to, like, because there's that thing with nostalgia is you often get that that rose tinted kind of feel to it, and that everything is good and golden. He actually paints it as in the awkward, I'm sorry, I just didn't know any better, like in that way.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I spoke to Katie last week about the idea of, is it a true, story to Ben? And we don't know that is accurate, but it's definitely at very least an amalgamation of people around him at that time in his life, right? You gather those stories from what you know and what you see, and I think it's a fairly accurate picture. But it's I think always not brave. I don't mean, but like it's a more interesting tack to take, to go like, okay, I'm not the best person in this. I'm boastful, and I'm take advantage of someone, and I'm not. I just think that's a much more interesting way to look at it than to tell like a nice story about a beautiful first kiss at a disco.
Oh, for sure, because it's I suppose it comes back to a little bit like what you and Katie were speaking about before, is like the authenticity of it. You could try, and what I love is with Ben is that he's brought so many of those little aspects. Maybe I'm overanalyzing. Ben, if you're listening, please let me know. Or what? But like he calls, I don't know if this is the right term. It's the term I'm going to call. He's got kind of like a rubber band or an elastic band performance, and that it's like he goes that very nice slow, and then he'll ping off. And I always have a great admiration for people that can move with like the mic in hand, that don't use the static stand.
Yeah,
and I think gives it a really nice sort of like restless teenager kind of moving about feel to it, and I don't think it would have quite the same impact. One, if he told it in that more romantic way, because it wouldn't feel genuine to me or people that sort of grew up around it. I think it would actually almost be potentially a bit disrespectful for the, like you say, to like the women there going that he's glorifying that. So I really like that he doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's
interesting you say that about his movement, because it's a nightmare as an editor making that video. 'Cause we've got 3 cameras and there's points where Ben is in none of them. But that energy that he brings to that piece, and he knows when to slow down and come into the audience, and he knows when to sort of like push across the stage. You know what I mean? It's like you're saying that he really adds into that's frenetic kind of pubescent energy where you're torn all over the place.
And it's such a strong, like, it's like, I think that bit, like that poem in Jay, you could look at that and be like, that's very much a performance for that poem. And I think watching his set that night, being glad I didn't film his set because of the reasons you said, but he does, he tailors and he adapts sort of the way he performs and his movements, as well as his vocal. Like, I know this sounds very silly for a spoken word performer, but he's like a very performance-based poet, especially in his voice. Like, he's already got that sort of like that gritty Scottish accent to him that already takes you a place. And then, but he knows when to slow down, he knows when to speed up, and he knows when to use like the use of like the obvious breaths to cause breaks. I just say
to get a laugh at points as well. You know what I mean? And he knows he's going to get that laugh. It's funny. I had I don't get into Twitter beef, but I had a brief encounter with it was the guys at Poetry as Fuck, Andrew and Ross, who threw up a Twitter thing just being like, what's more important, performance or writing or something like that. And some dude had been like, oh well, you can make up for bad writing with a good performance. And I was like, just framing it like performance isn't a skill. And it taps into what Katie was saying, where, you know, it's easy to look at someone like Ben, and because he's got this Glaswegian accent, and he's, you know, the tattoos and the, you know, the overlarge black shirt and stuff, he looks very gritty and real, you know what I mean? That's the words people would use. And so they look at that performance and go, oh, what, you know, that they put that down to just effortless him, that he is this real character. And you're like, Ben's crafted, you know, I mean, as much as it comes from a real place, he's crafted that persona. And I'm going to crowbar another wrestling analogy in here, Mark.
Of course.
The best wrestlers are always themselves turned up to 11. And I think that goes with any performer, is you should be yourself, but just kind of tweaked up a bit. And that's what Ben is, right? He's like a fun, loving Glaswegian guy who likes a drink, can have a joke, but has a sensitive, emotional side to him, an undercurrent through him. And so you get that character on stage as Ben Rogers, but it's not just him reading poems. It does him a disservice to think that.
Well, yeah, because in the same way, like, it allows him to do multiple based stuff. So you've got that, especially with that, it's a really good analogy of turning yourself up to 11, because then you've got that, it's still you, and it's, I don't know, maybe not the right word, but easier to, you know, to be you. You know, we write what we know, or we perform what we know. But then when you're turning it up, it lets him do something like this, which is, you know, a bit more comedic in that way. But then I've seen Ben do, like, pieces that are just, like, straight up, you know, will hit you right in the feels in the same way. And, like, it gives him, and he already has, but it's a very clever thing that he's done with giving himself such range.
It's like, it's comparable to stuff like, you know, it's like when Bon Jovi burst out a ballad. You're used to this sort of big rock sound, and then they'll undercut it. Like Ben has that ability, like most people that perform with a bit more of a chaotic energy. It's one of my favorite things about, especially the Glasgow scene, who are folk that dive into that real energy, that real punch, that real frenetic pace. But then all of them will have poems that undercut that tone and change it and come from a kind of softer point of view. So it's a real good, you know, strings to the bow and all that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like you said with performance, and especially that I always love the particular a lot of the Glasgow poets as well. I mean, a lot of the Edinburgh poets as well. With their performance thing, it comes back to your Twitter feud. Is like, what's more important, writing or performance? But I think it's easy for some folk to be going, oh well, of course it's poetry. It should be, the writing should be the most important. But then you go to a slam, and the two rounds that are always consistent are quality of writing, sure, but then quality of performance. And so, like, when that's half the judging category, you know, that it's an important thing, whether people want to, like, not acknowledge that, or whether, you know, there's the more purists, not to sound like people that prefer the more spoken word or the written word, like the written word over the spoken word. But like, I think that's the thing I really like about spoken word, and put it out there, spoken word over written word. And maybe it's to do with because I know you're sharing this with a theatre background, is, for me, when I first saw poetry, it seemed like poems were almost a bit like, you know, short monologues.
Yeah, I get that.
And so you could tell a story, you could get the emotion across, you can do, and then I think that's maybe almost part of one of the problems poetry maybe has, is when people think about poetry, they don't think of how great the performance can be. They think of, you know, that person in a dark room or at the back of a bookshop with a reading they always picture it in a very monotone voice. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how good the writing is at that point.
Well, we discussed it when we were discussing Colin Bramwell, and it's that thing of like, I'm never interested in a debate, particularly between whether page poetry or stage poetry is better. They're just different. They're different, you know, skills, and that's the point. Is that my thing is, I don't like it when spoken word and performance poetry is kind of treated as like, oh well, that's easier because it's just about performing good. And I'm like, performing good is hard. Like it's its own skill, and the writing to performance. Like this piece by Ben is I don't know if that works the same on the page or can resonate, but not because page poetry is bad, but because it wasn't written for that purpose. It was written to be performed, as far as I know, like from my assessment of it anyway. So it's about going like, that is a skill in itself, and you see it especially with just so you know, a broader theme for this kind of episode is like, verging into the surreal, like bringing on the weird a bit.
Yeah.
And so like it's especially you see it in those folk that do that. They
I wish I hadn't laughed at that.
I'm like 8 years old. They especially, you know, like really when you're pushing those boundaries, you can get into some weird and wonderful stuff. So yeah, we're chatting about Ben Rogers, but I don't want to take up all the time just chatting with Ben.
No, I mean we could fill an episode with Ben Rogers. He is fantastic, but I love the
sweet.
weird and surreal. It's my jam. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. It's fine. I'm going to tell a great story about Ben Rogers on the Loudcast Extra because less people see that, and so that'll be fine. But yeah.
Can I check because I've thought because that was about Ben Rogers. Is it one that took place at a certain Glasgow venue that made you very surprised?
It was, yeah.
Good. Yeah, well, that's a crack. Because when I was thinking Ben Rogers, I was going like, oh yeah, I remember when he did that, and it's like, yeah, one of the more surreal things I've ever seen.
So if you want a little glimpse into how weird Ben Rogers can get, come and join us on the Loudcast Extra over on the Patreon channel. But for now, let's keep chatting to Mark about the sort of surreal poetry. And what I mean by that isn't necessarily because like next week we're going to talk about comedy with Beck Sherwood, so it's not necessarily about just comedy, although obviously a lot of surreal poetry does lend itself to that, but it's also looking at just like poetry that's kind of pushing the edges of what most people would expect it to do. And so like good examples that I picked were from our experimental word show way back when with Sam Illingworth and Dan Simpson, and Dan did his Emoji Poem.
Yes.
Which is a poem made out of emojis, and Leo Glaister with Telephony, which is his sort of helpline for poets.
So good. I love it so much.
So I was like, I know you're a guy who, in a lot of the writing that we do, and I'll get to that, I'll get to when you're, you know, ordered to kind of do strange stuff. But I was like, in the creative process of just what you're doing, are there big examples that stand out to you, people who have pushed those boundaries and sort of, you know, lent into the weird a bit?
I mean, Leo Glaister's Telephony is one of my absolute favorite pieces. I mean, I also like from working in a call center. That's just so real for me, and so and his dedication to all of that. So Leo Glaister for me, and I don't know whether I'm like going to be the same in this. For me, the two that stand out in terms of the weird and the surreal are, or definitely lean into it, are people like Ross McCleary and Andrew Blair.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan Simpson's Emoji Poem is because I remember seeing his show. I don't think it was the Emoji Poem where he did like the guided poetry meditation.
Yeah,
and it's just sat there going, breathe in, breathe out, and it's really nice. It's in Banshees. It's all dark. You know, it is all dark, but your eyes are closed, so you don't know. And there's like, don't think about snakes. And then and it's like so clever because already I'm suddenly just thinking about snakes. So like, but yeah, and Andrew Blair, especially with his fantastic obsession with like Robert Pattinson.
Actually, like, I wasn't going to do another plug here. This is not to do a plug, but there's one up on Patreon just now. It'll be coming out on YouTube next Thursday, which is an Andrew Blair, Robert Pattinson poem from one of our shows. So that is particularly surreal. We're going to be talking about that next week with Bex.
Oh, okay. I'll leave that one there. Well, because for me as well on that, as because with Andrew Blair, I'm gonna leave him because there's lots to talk about, and I know you and Bex will have great fun with that. But yeah, people like Ross McClure with his alphabet spaghetti poem.
His whole premise for his Fringe show just recently.
Oh yeah, I mean everything.
Employ me, you cowards. And it's essentially a business presentation. He's become obsessed with things like LinkedIn and stuff. Yeah, if you check out guys like Ross McClure.
Oh, hey, I'm pretty sure I have it around here somewhere.
Oh, really?
I actually, I bought it as no. Oh, I've got it somewhere. Oh, I won't waste time looking for it, but I have it, and it's a really good. It's a really good sort of book and pamphlet. And did he tell you how he was like when he did that at the Fringe? How he was flyering people?
No.
He was just like striking his hand out very loudly, like and just saying the title, like "Endorse me, you coward!" And when people would walk, or like just endorse me, and then when people would do the inevitable, as people are fine and want to do, go like no thanks or walk away, he would just shout "coward" at them, and that's to me,
it's bold.
Yeah, like it's bold, but it's Ross McClure, and that's because that's not what people must initially think when you say poetry.
No,
like it can't be.
Not. Although, but then Ross's pamphlet is published like through Stewed Rhubarb and stuff, so he's doing some legit interesting stuff. I think it like a thing I was going to bring up as well, actually, and it's interesting because even in that short spell there, all the people you named are straight white dudes. And
yeah, good point.
I've brought you on to chat because you do quite a bit of surreal poetry and you're a straight white dude. And the two guys we've started this video with are straight white dudes. And I don't know if there's something there. We spoke about last week on the podcast with Katie, and I brought up that idea. You know, we were chatting about that idea that a lot of artists from sort of disenfranchised backgrounds or people who haven't, you know, sort of had that privilege where they're, you know, people of color or, you know, a disability or you know, LGBT, things like that, where that becomes something you talk about a lot. And there's pros and cons to that, where there's, you know, it's good for people, it's sharing an important message, it's maybe working through your own trauma or your own issues around that. But then there's the double-edged sword to it, where sometimes you can be, you know, perpetually forced into doing the same, not forced, but expected to do a similar kind of vein of material.
Well, yeah,
Kate used the good example of Joelle Taylor, because she writes a lot about being a queer woman. Like, that's not all she's supposed to write about.
Did you mention the last one? Is it Tyro's who's I Don't Have a Black Person poem?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think a very good idea and a very good poem. But yeah, I agree with what you say. I mean, there's definitely something to that. I mean, for me, like with me, yeah, I'm very much a straight white dude. I come from I've been very lucky. My parents and my family are wonderful, but I don't have I don't have stuff like that. There are people that will write. I can be an ally to as many things as I want there, but you know, it's not my story to tell, and other people will do it better. Or from a
I think
more
that's
real
the important
place.
thing, that it's not the story to tell. And like when poetry is something that, you know, like we've discussed before, can be so rooted in the real story that it becomes, you know, what do I have to add to that's going to really help anyone or really shape anything? And so there is a temptation to swing into the surreal and leave that kind of style of poetry for the people who can do it better and use it more effectively as a tool. And that's not to say no one is. Like, obviously, we have a limited catalogue. Like, we have a lot of poems on our site, but we don't have an infinite amount. And I'm saving some, like Angie Strachan's Seagull poem fits into the weird. But again, we're going to be talking about that a little bit next week. So you're like, it's not that no one's doing it, but, you know, when you find that cross-section and it is so overwhelmingly straight white men, I wonder what that is that's there.
Well, yes, and it's a good one. Like for the Andy Strachan poem, it's a good person to talk about with Bex, because again, like if you're talking about some more surreal stuff, Bex, she's not the cow poet, but she has the most cow poems of any poet I know.
Yeah, but yeah, I wonder if it is just rooted in something of like we've often talked about it. You know, as guys, you kind of maybe start writing love poems because it's that shared feeling and something you all understand, and then, you know, there's more temptation for us to do character pieces or you know, like sort of abstract stuff, just because we're not using it in the same cathartic way, the same sort of tool for healing, if you like.
Well, that's very much what I like. I could say that's, you know, almost bang on for me. Like, I wouldn't call myself, and I have a few pieces, and again, there's always exceptions, but I wouldn't call myself really like a confessional poet. I don't know, like, even like more, I suppose in the early days, I would write based on feelings because I was learning, and I'm still learning. But I've, you know, I don't want to use the term find your style, but I found the stuff I enjoyed writing more or had, you know, bigger interest in, it was stuff like, you know, myths and legends and ancient history and this more fantastical kind of idea. And so, like, yeah, because I didn't have either as much of a backlog or didn't want, maybe it was just more private or more scared about writing stuff like that, I definitely turned more to the storytelling, the weird and the surreal, because there's only so many times people want to hear, like, no one wants to hear about day to day. You know, in my opinion.
I think it also comes from the sort of poets we were exposed to and stuff. Like I grew up a lot with guys like, you know, even as a kid, sort of Spike Milligan and Roald Dahl, and then as you get older and it's your dad talking about John Cooper Clarke or Phil Jupitus or Roger McGuff, and it's a pity because people like Jules Denby and Selena Godden and stuff get left out of those lists because at the time, you know, people just didn't want female poets. It was a bad culture around it.
Yeah,
and you're like,
sure.
should they have got bigger breaks and be spoken about in the same sort of terms as those people? And I absolutely think so. But it's what you're exposed to as you're coming up, and for a long time, poetry has been the realm of the straight white guys. So it's interesting to see, especially in spoken word, where it is a much more live art form. It relies on this audience, sharing of emotion, and this vein of catharsis that kind of runs through everything we do. It's interesting to see where people then go and find their style. Yeah, I don't, and obviously, again, we're now two privileged white dudes sitting chatting about it, and
Absolutely.
Obviously because of coronavirus and things like that, there's a limit to who we can have on the show, and we're just getting set up. But I think it's definitely a thing I want to talk about in a future episode about the ideas of privilege and who's writing what and stuff. And so hopefully we can get some more in tune voices, some more experienced voices on the show.
Oh, I mean, that would be wonderful. But it's
very good.
Yeah. No, I was just.
But for now, I do actually want to pull you up on. You were just saying about the getting a bit mythical and a bit surreal with history poems. Now, you and I have a rich history of writing some weird stuff, but not because we wanted to, but because we had to. Including, do you want to talk about the escape poems? Okay. Let's not name the company, but let's just say a reputable escape company.
Yeah, I would love. Those are some of those poems. We're working on them for that. Was some of definitely the most surreal and weirder things having to do. And it's a nice position to be in. To be going, right, well, I have to write these poems. But some poems you don't want to write. Those were when you're allowed to get weird, when you like getting weird.
Well, this was the thing. So we got commissioned to write some poems for themed rooms for a escape room franchise, and it was I had a Oriental room, which was, so I wrote this weird crane poem about and did a origami folding, and Mark, you wrote this insane Viking beer hall thing. Oh
yeah, well, because there was three rooms that they had, that was so we were doing one for each room, as it were, to try and sort of describe that story, I guess, in a poem. And you had your I really want to see a video for that, by the way, just as a small interlude.
I should do something. It was quite cool. It worked out quite well.
And then because I did the Viking one, but then I also wrote a sea shanty, because the other one was a pirate one.
Yes. Yeah. How do you approach something like that then? If you're sitting down to write a sea shanty, what's your aim for that?
Well, and this is where it's almost certainly like a bad sea shanty, because it's where it's like come into like what's for the does it go to the music? Do you write the words and then have the music in the background? What I did was, because I don't have a huge amount of knowledge with sea shanties, I found like the background.
Really, you go. Come on, man, hone up on your sea shanties.
I know. I know some good sea shanties, but like I don't really know where they come from. It's not really sort of the time for it. My favorite sea shanties are stuff like Ailstorm, the heavy metal pirate band from Perth. But it's not really the vibe I thought they were going for. So I did is I got the sea shanty of the Roll the Old Chariot Along, which is just there's a great one of like a guy just singing that in his town centre, and I sort of took the music or the flow of that and threaded it into the more pirate theme that they had for this. So it was a little bit cheaty, like kind of using that formula. Maybe not cheaty, because that's how you got to start when you don't know how to do a thing. Was imitation the greatest form of flattery, and you got to good artists borrow, great artists steal.
Yeah, exactly. But it's an odd approach. Like, I think the research aspect, it's one of the fun things about being kind of prompted to do those more surreal poems, like you were saying, the origami one I did. I read a bunch of variants of this myth of this crane that turns, a woman that turns into a crane, and it was really interesting reading. You can learn quite a lot. Katie, of course, recently wrote a 3,000-word essay on Helen of Troy for no other reason than she wanted to write a poem. So you can get stuck right in. What's the weirdest bit of writing you think you've ever done, Mark?
I don't know. I have quite a few in terms of like what would be called like weird or surreal. The first one that always comes to mind for me is the prize poem from our 20 2018 Fringe show, the Fantastical Game Show Spectacular, the Speedboat poem, which
way too sexual.
Yeah. Oh, it's very sexual. The weird thing about that poem is that was supposed to be like that whole poem. It's one of the very few times this has ever happened to me. Is I wrote that in like one sitting, and then like minor edits and stuff. But I wrote that predominantly in one sitting. But that bit about the speedboat was only supposed to be, the first couple of stanzas. That was supposed to introduce a whole stream of different prizes and game shows, and there was going to be a whole journey of this guy going more mental. So it had the capacity. It was meant to be more weird than it was. And then I looked at it and went, oh, well, that's the poem. Because I had just gone on such this love tangent with this speedboat. And
you need to do what Bex did and like start writing a pamphlet based off this one poem that you could just extrapolate out forever.
Yeah. Because I've got that. And then I have another one, which is similar theme, I guess we'll call it, like Telephile, which is all about way too much love and then broken love with my mobile phone.
I do remember the first night you busted that out, I did deck myself a bit. Do you have anything you want to read for us on the show before we sort of wrap stuff up?
Before we wrap
stuff
up,
the Loudcast Extra.
Yep, absolutely. I definitely have something I would like to read. I got loads of stuff I would like to read, talking about like the myths and research. There was stuff during NaPoWriMo, one about Edis, who is an unknown hero of history, and it was really good fun learning up about him and how crazy good he was. I'm not going to read that one because that one is going into a pamphlet project that's maybe going to be up on Patreon. So when that comes out, have a read of that. But the one I want to read,
stay tuned.
I know. Well, the one I want to read is one that is from our Halloween show the other year, where I was one of the kind of things where I thought I'm going to write like a spooky story. In a way, and I decided I was like, I'm gonna, because it was for the Halloween special, I wanted to write something a bit weird, and that show was full of weird stuff. I mean, there was
strange.
I mean, on top of this weird surreal thing about that, the one I did with with Freya, that was an entire like 7-8 minute poem for a card trick. Was great fun and very surreal. Bizarre. But the one I'm gonna read is because it's called A More Modern Approach. It's one of my more favourite surreal things that I've written, and it sort of ties back into, I feel like, going, this wouldn't be as one of these ones that you could read it, but I like the performance aspect of this one. So
awesome.
Why are there no modern ghosts? Why do none play haunting hosts to place of resident post the 1930s? Not to be morbid, but 55 million people die each year, and statistically some of them must have wanted to follow in Swayze's footsteps on a similar thought. Why is there not any modern horror stories apart from the state of the world, the environment, politics, the cost of Freddos? Anyway, not those. Where's the myth of the Airbnb account 13? Where's the campfire fairy tale of the tracksuit terror? Where's the fable of the vanishing Wi-Fi? Where is the poem of the Netflix ghost? I used to live a pretty normal life. 9-to-5 jobs, some hobbies, a few friends. To meet ends, I rented a room with one. I was lucky. But one night as I wandered weak and bleary to the bathroom, something seemed strange. TV on, big light off. Are you still watching Netflix? Weird.
Joyous stuff, Mark. That's glorious. I think there's a short film in there of the Netflix ghost.
Oh, there's the Netflix ghost, and that's the thing. Is that there's a longer version of that. But I wanted to say, if I one of those things I might be putting up of myself. But yeah, where's the weird Netflix ghost? It always bugs me that all ghosts always look like they're dressed from not a modern era.
Yeah, it is weird. There's no up-to-date ghosts. I mean, the whole horror thing we could get into, again, maybe that should be its own one. I was going to chat a bit about that on the surreal. There's so much good horror poetry out there. But for now, a big thank you to you, Mark, for coming on the Loudcast. Hopefully we will have you back in soon for some more poetry and some more poetic insight from you.
I would love to be back. Thank you very much for having me.
Where can the people find you on the Twitters and the Instagrams and all that?
So pretty much, I'm on most things as either Mark Gallie. You can find me through, I retweet a lot You can find me through a lot of the I Am Loud and Loud Poets stuff. But it's like Jolly Ginger 14 on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not the best at uploading on social media, but when I do, it's really fun. So it's worth it for the long pauses, but the big payoff.
Ace. So check Mark out. You can see lots more from Mark on our YouTube channel, on our Patreon channel. You can help support him by signing up to Patreon or by getting a Loud Poets t-shirt or an I Am Loud t-shirt over on our Redbubble. But for now, guys, that is all from the Loudcast. We are going to be sticking about with Mark to have a wee chat on the Loudcast Extra. If you want to check that out, again, just jump over to the Patreon channel. But for now, we will see you next week. Take it easy, guys. Mark, say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, we'd appreciate it if you could hit the like button, if you could hit the subscribe button, and make sure to ring that bell icon so you don't miss any updates from us in the future. If you want to go that extra mile and support us a little further, we do have a Patreon channel with loads of exclusive goodies, and you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. We appreciate your help, guys, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.